The courtroom went silent when my own mother looked the judge in the eye and said, "She is not my daughter." Gasps echoed. I felt my knees weaken, but then the judge paused, reached for an old file, and everything changed. Family is supposed to be your safe place. But what happens when the person who gave you life denies you in court? In today's story, a shocking accusation threatens to erase a woman's identity forever, but buried in the past is a truth so powerful, it turns betrayal into justice and pain into strength. Stay with me, because this ending changes everything. My mother didn't hesitate. She swore under oath, with a calmness that felt almost rehearsed, that I wasn't her biological child. She claimed I had been adopted, that I had no connection to our family bloodline, and that I had no legal or moral right to any inheritance or family property. At that moment, the courtroom felt colder, almost suffocating, as if the air itself was punishing me for daring to exist. Every eye in the room seemed to linger on me, some with curiosity, others with quiet judgment, but all carrying the unspoken question, could a mother truly deny her own child? Her words weren't just a legal strategy, they were a public, deliberate act of erasure. They cut deeper than any verdict or legal decision ever could. It was as if the person who was supposed to be my protector had willingly taken a knife to my identity, and the wound was raw, exposed for the world to see. I could feel the weight of disbelief pressing down on my chest, my voice caught somewhere between shock and the desperate need to defend myself. I thought of every memory, every bedtime story, every lesson, every touch, every word of love, or what I believed had been love, and wondered if any of it had ever been real. The betrayal wasn't just legal. It was profoundly personal. Even as she spoke, I tried to remind myself that this was a courtroom, that words here were weapons, and that people often say shocking things when money or status is at stake. But knowing it didn't make it any easier. It was my mother, my own mother, who was standing there, attempting to erase me from history. Each sentence she uttered felt meticulously crafted to leave me small, invisible, and powerless. The more she spoke, the more I felt my world shift beneath me. Memories that I had taken for granted now felt uncertain, fragile, as though someone could pull them away with a single word. It was a strange combination of anger, disbelief, and sorrow. I realized that the fight in front of me wasn't only about inheritance, it was about identity, about proving that I existed, that I mattered, that my life had value simply because I had lived it. I looked around the courtroom for support, for a familiar face that could anchor me in that moment, but the solemnity of the room amplified the loneliness. The judge's gavel seemed miles away, and every tick of the clock echoed my racing heart. I wanted to speak, to shout, to demand that the truth be seen, but the words felt trapped in my throat. My mother's declaration was more than denial, it was a declaration of power, a statement that she alone could define my existence. And in that instant, I understood the stakes with crystal clarity. If the world believed her, it wouldn't just take away material things, it would try to take away me. My very identity was on trial. And yet, beneath all the pain and fear, a small spark of determination lit within me. This wasn't the end. Her words, no matter how cruel, were not the final truth. They were an obstacle, yes, but not an absolute. Somewhere in the shadows of forgotten documents, memories and evidence, the real story of my life, my connection to my family still existed, waiting to be uncovered. Her betrayal was sharp, but it couldn't erase the years I had lived, the bonds I had formed, or the truth that no matter what she said, I had a right to be here, to be seen, and to be acknowledged. That quiet realization, almost imperceptible at first, became my anchor. The fight wasn't just about inheritance, it was about reclaiming myself, proving that no denial could erase my existence. If she was believed, I would lose everything: my name, my home, and my sense of belonging. I had always taken for granted that my identity, my memories, the life I had built, were real and undeniable. But now, standing in the courtroom, every familiar landmark of my existence seemed fragile, as if someone could erase it with a single declaration. The weight of her words pressed down on me in a way I had never experienced before. It was not just a legal claim she was making, it was a personal attack, a denial of the life I had known since the moment I was born. Suddenly, everything I had believed about myself was called into question. Friends and family watched silently from the benches, their eyes flickering between me, my mother, and the judge. The tension so thick it felt like it could choke the air from the room. The courtroom wasn't just deciding property. It was deciding whether my entire life was a lie. My childhood photos, my school records, the family vacations, the small everyday moments that had shaped me, were they all just illusions, unmoored from truth? For the first time, I questioned whether the people I trusted most had really seen me for who I was. Every smile I had shared, every hug, every story told at the dinner table, it all felt suddenly fragile, hanging by the thinnest thread. I could almost hear the echo of her voice repeating her claim in my head, a mantra that threatened to redefine my reality. And in that moment, I realized that the stakes were not just legal or material, they were existential. They were about whether I could claim the right to exist as myself in a world that suddenly seemed ready to deny me. Every eye in the room turned toward the judge as my future hung by a thread. I could feel their collective breath, a mixture of curiosity, sympathy, and disbelief, settling over me. My heart pounded so loudly that I feared it might give away my fear, yet I tried to stand tall, clinging to the small reserve of courage I had left. Time seemed to slow as the judge reviewed the documents, paused to adjust his glasses, and looked up again with a gaze that felt like it could pierce through lies and excuses alike. I prayed silently for a miracle, for some piece of truth to emerge that would validate everything I had ever believed about myself. In that room, reality and uncertainty collided in a way I had never known. One wrong word, one misstep, and the life I had built could vanish, replaced by a narrative that wasn't mine. I was forced to confront a chilling truth. The people we expect to protect us sometimes become the ones who challenge our very existence. And yet, amid the fear and doubt, there was a spark of determination I couldn't extinguish. No matter what happened, I would hold on to my sense of self, to the memories that no court could erase, and to the knowledge that truth eventually has a way of emerging even when it seems impossible. That's when the judge asked for a sealed hospital record from 2 decades earlier, a file that had been locked away, gathering dust in the courthouse archives. Almost forgotten, the courtroom seemed to hold its breath as the clerk carefully opened it. The sound of the folder snapping echoed louder than I imagined possible in such a tense silence. Inside were documents I never thought I would see, my very first proof of existence. Proof that had been quietly waiting all these years for the right eyes to find it. There was a birth report, typed neatly on yellowing paper, listing my mother's name in precise, official handwriting, the same name she had just denied publicly. For the first time, I could see in black and white what I had known in my heart my whole life, that I was her child. But it didn't stop there. The file contained fingerprints, meticulously recorded and preserved, linking me to my mother in a way no words could. Each tiny ridge and swirl of ink on that paper was like a silent witness, a reminder that the truth cannot be erased, no matter how hard someone might try. The judge held it carefully, turning pages slowly, and I could feel the tension in the room spike with every movement. My mother's confident, cold expression faltered slightly, the first crack in the wall of denial she had built around herself. Then came a piece that made my heart pound harder than anything else, a handwritten note from a nurse who had been present at my birth. The note was brief, but unmistakably firm, written in ink that had faded just enough to make it look like it had survived 100 untold stories. She had insisted years ago that the records be preserved, that no one's truth should vanish, even if the people involved chose to forget. Her words were more than instructions, they were a declaration that truth, once documented, is eternal. Reading them, I realized that someone had quietly fought for me, for my identity, for my right to exist, without knowing that one day it would be my lifeline in a courtroom filled with doubt and accusation. One file, untouched for 20 years, held proof no one could deny. The air felt charged, heavy with relief and shock. I remember feeling my chest tighten as I looked around at everyone in the courtroom, knowing that this single piece of paper had the power to change everything. It was more than evidence, it was a reminder that even when the world seems to turn against you, the truth is waiting, patient, silent, unshakable. That file, fragile and forgotten, had the quiet strength to undo years of lies, of pain, and of fear. It was as if my very existence had been quietly guarded, waiting for the moment when justice could finally recognize it. And in that moment, I understood something I had never truly grasped before. Truth has its own timeline, and when it finally emerges, it has the power to heal, to restore, and to triumph in ways no one, not even the loudest voices of doubt, can ever silence. The judge ruled in my favor, and for a moment, the weight I had carried for so many years felt lighter than I could have imagined. But more than the legal victory, more than the words on a piece of paper, the real triumph was that the truth had finally been spoken out loud. For years, I had carried the shadow of doubt, the gnawing question of who I really was. My mother's denial had not only been a legal challenge, it had felt like an attempt to erase my existence, to tell me that my life, my memories, my very being were not valid. Yet, standing in that courtroom, as the gavel struck and silence fell, I realized that no denial, no matter how loud or persistent, could ever erase the reality of who I am. I didn't win because I wanted revenge, and I didn't win because I was angry. I won because truth had a way of surviving even when it's buried beneath years of lies, neglect, and fear. The court wasn't just acknowledging legal facts, it was acknowledging my reality, my life, my existence. It was a recognition that no one else has the authority to define who I am. That sense of affirmation, that acknowledgement from the world, was worth far more than any inheritance, any property, or any fleeting sense of victory over someone else. It was a declaration that my story, my identity, cannot be stolen or rewritten by anyone, not even the person who should have been the first to protect it. Walking out of the courtroom that day, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and liberation. The emotional weight I had carried for so long, the humiliation, the fear, the quiet pain of feeling invisible began to lift. I realized that identity isn't something that can be given or taken. It is something you claim every single day, through the way you live, the choices you make, and the love and respect you show yourself. I realized that being recognized in court was not just a legal victory, it was a symbolic one. It reminded me that our value isn't determined by the acceptance or denial of others. Our value is inherent. Our identity is ours alone. More than anything, the experience taught me resilience. It taught me that even when someone we love tries to deny us, even when the people who are supposed to protect us fail, the truth has a power that cannot be silenced forever. It reminded me that our histories, our lives, and our truths deserve to be acknowledged, not because they justify revenge or punishment, but because they affirm our existence in a world that sometimes feels determined to ignore it. And in that affirmation, I found something far deeper than justice. I found freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from doubt, and freedom to embrace my life fully, knowing that no one, not even my own mother, could ever take that away from me. Sometimes the past stays quiet for years, waiting for the right moment to speak. And when it does, no lie, no matter how loud, can survive it. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because truth deserves to be heard.